Welcome to an interview in history. This week we'll be talking with General Robert E. Lee. This week's interview takes place on September 4th, 1870. Lee was a Confederate general during the American Civil War, toward the end of which he was appointed the overall commander of the Confederate States Army. He led the Army of Northern Virginia, the Confederacy's most powerful army, from 1862 until its surrender in 1865, earning a reputation as a skilled tactician. Good day, General Lee. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin with your early life. Where and when were you born?
Hello, and thank you for having me here. This is something very different for me. I was born on January 19, 1807, at Stratford Hall Plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia. My father was Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee, a Revolutionary War hero, and my mother was Anne Hill Carter Lee, from the well-known Carter family of Virginia. My father suffered severe financial reverses from failed investments and was put in debtor's prison. Soon after his release, the following year, the family moved to the city of Alexandria, which at the time was still part of District of Columbia. Several members of my mother's extended family lived nearby.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I was the fifth of 6 children. My siblings included several notable figures which I won't discuss here, though some of my brothers struggled throughout their lives. My sister, Anne, was particularly close to me.
What was your education like?
My formal education began at the Alexandria Academy, and later I attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. I graduated second in my class without having received a single demerit, a distinction shared by only 5 of my 45 classmates. My education there set the foundation for my military career. After graduation, while awaiting assignment, I returned to Virginia to find my mother on her deathbed. She died at Ravensworth on July 26, 1829.
I'm so sorry to hear that. How did your military life begin?
After West Point, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers. I served in various capacities, including fortifying the defenses of Fort Monroe in Virginia and working on the St. Louis waterfront. My career truly advanced during the Mexican-American War, where I served as a captain and received several commendations for my actions in battle.
You married into a notable family as well. Can you tell us about your marriage and children?
Indeed. I married Mary Anna Randolph Custis in 1831. She was the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington. Together, we had 7 children, 3 sons and 4 daughters. Our family life was often disrupted by my military duties, but Mary managed our household and our children, ensuring they received the best education possible.
I understood that you were initially opposed to the division of the North and the South. Can you tell us about that?
Unlike many Southerners who expected a glorious war, I predicted it as protracted and devastating. I privately opposed the new Confederate States of America in letters in early 1861, denouncing secession as nothing but revolution and an unconstitutional betrayal of the efforts of the Founding Fathers. I wrote to George Washington Custis in January, and I told him that the South, in my opinion, has been aggrieved by the acts of the North. I feel the aggression and am willing to take every proper step for redress. It is the principle I contend for, not individual or private benefit. As an American citizen, I take great pride in my country, her prosperity and institutions, and would defend any state if her rights were invaded. But I could anticipate no greater calamity for the country than a dissolution of the Union. It would be an accumulation of all the evils we complained of, and I'm willing to sacrifice everything but honor for its preservation. I hoped, therefore, that all constitutional means were to be exhausted before there be a resort to force. Succession is nothing but revolution. The framers of our Constitution never exhausted so much labor, wisdom, and forbearance in its formation, and surrounded it with so many guards and securities. If it was intended to be broken by every member of the Confederacy at will, it was intended for perpetual union, so expressed in the preamble, and for the establishment of a government, not a compact, which can only be dissolved by revolution or the consent of all the people in convention assembled. Your role in the Civil War is well known. Can you reflect on your decision to join the Confederacy? It was not an easy decision. I was deeply committed to the Union, having served it my entire life. However, when Virginia seceded, I felt compelled to stand with my home state, despite my personal objections to secession. I was offered the command of the Union Army, but I could not bring myself to fight against my fellow Virginians. What would you consider the most significant moment of your military career during the Civil War? The most significant moment was perhaps the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. It was a turning point, and the loss was a heavy blow to the Confederate cause. Despite our early successes, the defeat at Gettysburg marked the beginning of the end of the Confederacy. General, your decision to surrender had to be a difficult one. How did you feel about that? Well, I resisted calls from some officers to reject surrender and allow small units to melt away into the mountains, settling up a lengthy guerrilla war. But I insisted the war was over and energetically campaigned for intersectional reconciliation. So far from engaging in a war to perpetuate slavery, I am rejoiced that slavery is abolished. I believe it will be great for the interests of the South. Generally, you served under both President Abraham Lincoln and President Jefferson Davis during very difficult periods of your life. How would you describe your relationship with and thoughts on each of these leaders? President Lincoln and I had limited personal interaction, but I held him in high regard. He was a man of great integrity and determination. Despite the deep differences that arose between the North and the South, I respected his commitment to preserving the Union. His leadership during the war was steadfast, though his decisions were often painful for the South. His assassination was a tragedy that further deepened the wounds of our nation. And what about Jefferson Davis? How did your relationship with him evolve during the war? President Davis and I had a close working relationship. He was a man of principle and conviction, deeply committed to the cause of the Confederacy. He entrusted me with significant military responsibilities, and we communicated frequently about the strategy and direction of the war. While we did not always see eye to eye on every matter, I respected his leadership and dedication. He faced immense challenges, leading a fledgling nation under siege from all sides, and did so with dignity and resolve. Did you see any noticeable differences in their leadership styles? Indeed, there were differences. President Lincoln was more pragmatic, willing to adapt and make difficult decisions as the war progressed. He also had the advantage of leading a well-established government with substantial resources. President Davis, on the other hand, was more rigid in his beliefs and principles, which often limited his flexibility. However, both men were committed to their respective causes and were strong leaders in their own right. Do you believe that either leader could have changed the outcome of the war had they acted differently? It's difficult to say. The war was a complex and multifaceted conflict, driven by deep-seated issues that went beyond the actions of any one individual. Both President Lincoln and President Davis did what they believed was right for their nations. The outcome of the war was shaped by many factors, including military strategy, political decisions, and the will of the people. In the end, the war was a tragic chapter in our history, and the lessons learned should guide us towards a more united future. General Lee, after the Civil War ended and you were released from your duties, how did you spend your retirement? Following the war, I accepted the position of president at Washington College in Lexington, Virginia, in the fall of 1865. My years at college were dedicated to education and the future of young men of the South. I believe strongly that the way to rebuild and move forward was through education. So, I focused on reforming and expanding the college's curriculum. My goal was to prepare students not only for traditional careers, but also to be leaders in a changing world. What specific changes did you make at Washington College? I expanded the curriculum to include more practical subjects such as engineering, law, and business, in addition to the classical studies the college was known for. I also encouraged the creation of honor codes and emphasized the importance of character and integrity. These changes were intended to help the South recover from the war and contribute positively to the nation. Did you involve yourself in public affairs or politics during this time? No, I chose to stay out of public political debates. I believed my time in politics had passed and that my focus should be on education and reconciliation. I received many letters asking for my opinion on political matters, but I generally refrained from expressing those views publicly. I felt it was more important to contribute in a way that fostered healing rather than division. How did you find peace after the war, given all that happened? I found peace in the knowledge that I was doing something meaningful by educating young minds. The war had been a devastating experience, and I believed that the best way to serve my country after the conflict was to help rebuild it through education and by encouraging a spirit of unity and forgiveness. What were some of your personal activities during your retirement? I spent time with my family, particularly my wife Mary, who was in poor health. I also enjoyed taking walks and riding around Lexington, which helped clear my mind. Additionally, I maintained a strong spiritual life, attending church regularly and finding comfort in my faith. What do you hope your legacy will be, General? I hope to be remembered, not only as a soldier, but as someone who sought to bring reconciliation and healing to a divided nation. The war was a tragedy, and my greatest desire was for peace and unity. If my life and actions can contribute in some way to a better understanding and a stronger union, then I would be content with that legacy. Thank you for sharing your experiences, General Lee. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing? Only that my greatest hope was for reconciliation and peace in our country. The war was a tragedy for all Americans, and it is my wish that future generations learn from our struggles and strive for unity. Thank you, General Lee. It sounds like your retirement is being spent in service to the next generation and in pursuit of reconciliation. Indeed, I believe then, as I do now, that the future of our nation depends on how well we can come together and learn from our past. General Robert E. Lee's life came to a close shortly after the war. After the war, he dedicated himself to his duties as president of Washington College, but in 1870 he began to feel unwell, suffering from heart issues. On September 28th of that year, he experienced what doctors believe was a stroke while attending a vestry meeting at the Episcopal Church in Lexington. This left him incapacitated. He lingered for a few weeks, but his condition worsened. His family and close friends were by his side during that time,
Despite their care, he passed away on October 12, 1870, at the age of 63. In his final days, he was at peace, surrounded by his loved ones. He spent much of his time in quiet reflection, thinking about his family, the future of the South, and the nation as a whole. He was deeply concerned about the healing of the country and the future of the people who had suffered so much. And now a forgotten history. On July 17, 1881, the American frontier lost one of its greatest legends, Jim Bridger, a towering figure in the annals of exploration and adventure. Bridger's life was immortalized by the words etched into his imposing headstone. Bridger, born on March 17, 1804, was a quintessential mountain man whose exploits shaped the West. His headstone succinctly captures his remarkable achievements. It reads, "Celebrated as a hunter, trapper, fur trader, and guide. Discovered the Great Salt Lake in 1821. Mapped the South Pass in 1827. Explored Yellowstone Park and its geysers in 1830. Founded Fort Bridger in 1838, and opened the overland route via Bridger's Pass to the Great Salt Lake. He served as a guide for the U.S. exploring expeditions, Albert Sidney Johnson's Army in 1857, and G.M. Dodge's Union Pacific surveys and Indian campaigns from 1853 to 1865. After a lifetime of daring adventures and invaluable contributions to American expansion, Bridger retired to a farm near Westport, Missouri. However, his twilight years were marred by illness and blindness. Despite these final struggles, his legacy endured, and he was laid to rest in the Mount Washington Cemetery in Independence, Missouri. Jim Bridger's life story is a tapestry of exploration, discovery, and indomitable spirit, forever etched in the fabric of American history. Join us next week as we talk with Jerome Kern, an American composer of musical theater. Until then, take care.